project with friends from Hudson O'Neill. You're gonna kick off your part in a second, but we're just really glad that you're able to come this morning. As I said, we're gonna be really casual. This is the first of 3 outreach meetings we're doing. They're all the same, so it's not like different stuff presented at different ones. But what we are working on is a comprehensive update of all of the town's land use regulations. Yeah, so, exactly. So these include subdivision regulations, site plan review regulations, all of the associated regulations that the planning board administers, driveway, etc., engineering standards, which you're going to speak to, and zoning amendments. Our focus is primarily on making sure that all the regulations are updated, are consistent with current statutes. So there have been lots of statutory changes. I think, as you know, things change every year. It's hard to keep up. So that's kind of the first blush, is looking through all the regulations to make sure they're up to date. Getting rid of any antiquated references, going through them, references to departments that no longer exist, to standards or manuals that are very out of date. So that's just kind of very, very, I don't want to say simple, it means going through everything, but it's not substantive. And then trying to look for any areas where there are inconsistencies or redundancies, which inevitably happen. Something is updated in the site plan regulations and it's not updated in the subdivision regulations at the same time. So getting rid of all of those. And then also just looking at, do things flow logically? Do things kind of make sense? Are things in the right place? Are they intuitive, right? We got a call yesterday from somebody in the town saying, oh, what about this? Right, nobody would ever think to look at the setback requirement for cars, offered for sale here. Let's put it where it makes sense. So a lot of it is things like that. And then there are some substantive changes for issues that have come up over time. But mostly we're really focused on organization, flow, removing inconsistencies and making sure we're up to date. So this has been a process that's been going on for some time. And our purpose really here today is we're not going to even attempt to go through the entire set of changes. We do have some drafts here. We also have an engaged site, and so we would encourage folks to go there, take a look. All the documents are posted, and as we make changes, those are posted as well. What we put up there is a redline version, so you can see exactly what has changed, and a clean copy, so you can see what it will look like. Just fair warning, when we look at the redline copies of some of these, there's a lot of red. So that's why we kind of got both up there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Reichert to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Jay. Like you said, I'm Steve Reichert. I work for Hudson O'Neill, and we've partnered with the NRPC to put these updates together for the town. With me is Erin Clement from Hudson O'Neill, and then Cassie.
And Cassie from NRPC.
She's from NRPC. She works with Jay.
Sorry, I didn't introduce the team.
Part of why we're here, and Jay said, this is the first of 3, and all 3 meetings are here to solicit input from the town, from residents, and what they think are problems with the regulations or the ordinances, any changes they'd like to see made. We'd like to hear about that. That's one of the big reasons why we're holding these meetings, is to get input from you folks that are here in the audience. Erin and I have been working specifically on site plan regulation updates, subdivision plan updates, and also the technical guideline updates. And we found, there's a few inconsistencies between all 3. Like in the subdivision regulations, there's a cul-de-sac pavement width that doesn't match what's in the technical guidelines. So part of what we're doing is just making those changes so that everything is consistent. Another thing that we've seen is site distance regulations. There's site distance information like in a bunch of different places. So what we're trying to do is, get it all into one place, into the driveway regulations where it belongs. And so we changed the regulations, we drafted regulations to make updates to everything else to reference the driveway regulations. As Jay talked about, there's a lot of legislative changes that are impacting the regulations and the ordinances. One of the recent ones that just came out was that the cul-de-sacs no longer can have a minimum length. The town's regulation now is 1,100 feet. So that's one of the changes we're going to need to make, or we are making in the technical guidelines and the subdivision regulations. So that's the type of things we're doing on our end. But again, we're here to listen to you, to find out what you see as an issue, and to get your input on potential changes from the residents. So like Jay said, also, we're really not a formal program or anything. Just feel free to walk up to us, talk to us. If you don't want to write or want to talk to us, there's note cards you can write down what you'd like to do or what you'd like to see. There's notepads over there. There's stickies. You can put stickies up on the boards. Just very open forum on how to express yourself. And, come talk to us. We're here to help.
Jay, do you want to talk about the one thing we're looking at as far as the housing goes? It's going to be completely separate than this. It's going to be a separate warrant article because of something we're looking to do to address, the housing that keeps coming up over and over again. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Which
Yes.
We're working on.
Yeah,
How
that
we're
is-
going to deal with that separately because it's a big. So please go ahead.
That's a good point. So as I mentioned, we're really not focused on substantive changes, but there is an interest in developing a ordinance, looking at an alternative. A lot of times what we call is kind of cottage court development. It is looking to provide an opportunity to develop smaller houses that are more affordable, as some sort of a special ordinance provision. So I'm calling it cottage court. And that's kind of a common term that's used. So, but because that is really a substantive change, that's being drafted separately, and the idea is that would be a separate warrant article. What we don't want to do is come up with a major reorganization of the ordinance and kind of stick something that significant in it. So that'll be freestanding. And that is just also a good point to make, because as Steve said, we're here looking for your input. If there are things that you think we should do that really are substantive changes, absolutely feel free to make those comments. This is really one effort, but I think as most people appreciate, town meeting is every year. There are opportunities for other ordinances, so there's opportunities for other freestanding ordinances if that's something that the town was interested in. So as Steve said, we want your input. There's many ways to do it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have a lot of thoughts and comments and it would make more sense to send an email, that also absolutely works. If you wanted to download a draft and mark it up and give it back to us, that works. Also on the Engage site, there's an opportunity to leave comments there. So you can comment any way you wish. And as we mentioned, there's 3 more of these. Our comment period, I guess I would say, is open. So don't feel as though if you came today and you didn't get to say what you wanted to say, your opportunity's gone. You have more opportunities, kind of really throughout this month to get us comments. Thoughts?
I'm gonna break the ice.
Thank you.
A situation arose in the Rangers Drive, Lois, Roy, that whole residential area, technically residential. Every single lot has been sold to either a single family or a duplex.
You sure?
There's no slots left. I have this one from your website.
Okay, that works.
It's all G.
Okay, yeah.
And here's Rangers, here's
Yeah.
Roy, Lois is coming in here. This is Windham.
Yes.
I don't think the update from the March warrant article creating a residential area here has reflected in this map. But it goes all, where are you? I'm like, turning it around upside down.
Right there, Jay. Right here.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a warrant article, Elvis, that took a section of Windham Road, and the homeowners got together and put a
Yes.
warrant article in to make sure it was residential and not G1 and not business. Now, we had a situation on Facebook where someone who really had no right to and was their stance was basically blown up under them. They wanted to put a recreational park and have the access through 23 Rangers Drive, which has a duplex on it.
Are we talking about, yes, yeah, so.
And
there
it
is-
gave
yeah.
us a heart attack, because
So
20
never go by what
I
you
know,
do on
I know,
Facebook.
I went directly to your offices,
Yes.
and then I posted, look, we're all residential up here, everything else is dismissal. And then they said, and I corrected my post, I said, any questions or concerns, go to this phone number, and the town will answer your questions. But that does not change the fact that we are all G and G1, which is, in my opinion, because I don't know the technicalities, you guys are the experts, okay? But I've seen too much where that, if it's even zone G1, someone theoretically could come in, buy a couple of houses, and put in a commercial. Because it is G1, it's not residential. We need that whole block of land switched over to residential.
And this is, by the way, the zoning map, that's land use, so you can see the green is general. It's G1.
Yeah, see, this section here,
That's G1, yeah.
that's G1.
Yeah.
And that terrified us. The homeowners near me were like, oh my God, this guy could do what he wants to do. Turns out he only rented the property, he couldn't legally do it, et cetera, et cetera.
They'll still have to go through a site plan, they'll still have to go through the whole process.
I know, but there's nothing in writing to stop them. And this is what I hear all the
You still gotta
time.
go through the process, just because they have the right to do it, you still have to sell it, right? So you guys as the butter still have say, you come to the meeting, so it has to make sense at the end of the day. But
But-
yes, I understand your
But
concern.
always what I hear is, oh, well, if we turn them down, we might get sued.
Hmm.
Okay, so my thought is that I'll spearhead it. We, in this group, this area here, worked very hard to get Rangers Forest, and that is zoned R2.
Oh, that's a forest now, you can't do anything there,
Right,
but yes.
right.
It doesn't
But-
matter what is zoned, it's a forest, right?
But because of the homeowners in this area,
Mhm.
we were the spearhead to get that happen, okay? It got onto the warrant article, blah, 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 blah,
Mhm.
everything got passed. So do I have to go through the whole process and reach out to those homeowners starting in September?
I'll take that.
And
So,
get their signatures, and we'll get a warrant article.
so
in
you're
March.
talking about a petition, right?
Yeah,
A
petition
warrant
warrant article.
which is separate than this. So you can do.
Well, but it's linked, because
No, it's not.
Ray says something about eventually
Jay.
it would be zoning, Jay,
Jay.
I'm sorry.
So we're not making any zoning changes through this process.
Right.
Going from one zone to the other, so we're not doing that under this particular, procedure we're doing right here. This
Right.
is technical, this is kind of like a long-term, fixing everything we have to move forward with the master plan at some point, but they're not changing the zones
Right.
through this.
Right.
Now, if you wanna have 25 signatures, put a petition out there,
Right.
X, Y, Z, you can do that
Right.
as a taxpayer all day long, 25
Right.
signatures, trying to figure out what's what. Now, does that go through the planning board still?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd like to just.
Jump in real quick.
I'd just like to say, we did some massive zoning changes over the last several years.
Yes, you have.
So with this
Thank you.
particular project that was coming in, those zoning changes were put on hold for a year. We do know that we need to address these areas that are all residential, but we just transformed such a large portion of the town, and we didn't want to conflict it with what we're doing here. So that hasn't been sidestepped for a year, but I believe it's still gonna come back because there's a lot of residential that's in the G zone. And our goal is to get the G zone going. So,
Well, I mean, if every single one of these lots is sold, okay, they're all residential,
yep.
there shouldn't be G1 anymore.
And I don't think you'll find anybody on the planning board disagrees with that.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons, we really focused on taking the circumferential highway area
Correct.
out of the equation, because that was a
Right.
big piece of the puzzle.
Right.
And we went into this process,
Right.
and we'll be revisiting that, because we wanna clean up the rest of this G zone. it just takes time.
Right.
And we don't wanna overwhelm the voters,
We don't know what,
overwhelm the voters by putting too many articles.
too many more.
Yeah. We're
Right.
making a big change here, the housing one's gonna be a big change, zoning is a big change, so we try not to just really beat up on the voters in one shot.
Well, but for instance, the Windham people
Yep.
had no problem at all. They went through the process, technical process, they submitted the warrant article, petition warrant article, it got on the ballot, it doesn't cost the town a cent.
Nope.
I mean, there's no increase in property taxes, nothing. It's
And-
just
and-
protecting people's investment in their homes.
And a petition warrant article, I don't think is a bad thing to do for that.
Yeah.
I'm just explaining why the planning board didn't continue addressing.
Oh,
those
no,
changes.
you can't do the whole thing.
Whole thing all the
all at
time,
once,
right, the whole
really.
time, right, So yeah, petition warrant article, you submit that to the town,
Right.
we hold a public hearing for it.
Right.
Petition warrant article, the planning board will make a change, even once it's submitted, make sure it's right, because it can be changed.
Right,
Yeah, so
right,
the
and that's
language-
where the wording.
Yeah.
But someone said that you could be a good advisor regarding the precise wording of the warrant article as well. So,
If it's the will of the town, we could certainly
Yeah,
help.
we have to be careful with not being, changing the intent of what you're trying to do, so.
right,
We wanna, I guess the best way to put it is, we wanna make sure it's legal, it's enforceable, the way you have the language in there. So
Right.
that would be the only feedback we would provide,
Right.
but we wouldn't in any way be associated in such way that it's like, it's a town now petition versus like a false
no, it'd be a
petition, that's all.
petition
But I just wanna
warrant
make sure that
homeowners
the
driven.
language you have there can be, it's enforceable, it's legal, it's not superseding anything else, it's
Right.
not against any RSA's, things like that, so I don't have a,
And you might be correct in that, because I believe we've had petition warrant articles.
that we
before
review.
That we sent to town council, and town council said
Okay.
that they cannot because it is a petition warrant article.
Okay, so
From a
then,
legal
you know,
standpoint, so.
so I guess I
So I
can't,
just got confused
Yeah.
there,
So
so
I
it has
can't-
to be a petition warrant article,
If you wanted it on the ballot this year, I would say it
Yes.
would have to be a petition warrant article.
yes.
I would say if you send it to the town, I do not believe the town has the
Can provide
legal
any-
right to review it to make sure it's proper.
Okay, so who can tell me whether the verbiage is proper? Do I go back to the Windham, warrant article and basically copy
Yeah,
that?
copy and paste that.
And copy and paste that verbiage?
Just change your,
Just change the roads that
Change.
we're referring to?
Yeah.
Right,
So-
all right, thank you.
I just didn't wanna give you a false expectation that the town is gonna take that petition warrant article, review it, because the town's not gonna see it until you get those 25 signatures.
Right,
And once those 25 signatures are on there,
right,
nobody can change it.
okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you, sorry.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I guess I was thinking that we were gonna hear about some of those substantial changes
Yeah.
this morning.
So, kind of going back to the point, we're really not making substantive changes, but I can talk about some of the things that we have done. So, I'll look at the and then you guys jump in. A couple, I guess, highlights. So the way the town's land use regulations are structured, the planning board's regulations are structured, it's a little bit different than what we see in most towns. There's really kind of two primary areas. It's the subdivision regulations, and that governs basically the process of subdividing land. And that outlines the process and all of the requirements that you have in order to submit a subdivision plan. Kind of how large it has to be, it's gotta have a north arrow, et cetera. And then there's a lot of detailed requirements and engineering related requirements. Then there's site plan review regulations, and those apply to non-residential developments, so commercial, industrial, and also multifamily. So those are similar, but they are different. The requirements that you have to meet are different. And we kind of outline both process and substantive requirements in the site plan regulations. Then there's what are called the administrative regulations. And those apply to both subdivision and site plan, and that's really what outlines the process. So one of the big changes that we've made is you kind of have the administrative regulations with all the process, everything you have to submit, all the steps you have to make. And then in the site plan regulations and the subdivision regulations, part of that is repeated, but it's inconsistent. So one of the things that we've done is let's put all of the process requirements in the administrative regulations, take out the references in the subdivision and the site plan. The reason for that is now there'll be one place that you have to go. If you wanna know what the process is, this is the place you go. You wanna know what you have to submit, this is where you go. And it gets rid of the inconsistencies, because what we found was there was inconsistencies across them. So you would look at the administrative regulations and it would say, this is what you have to do. If you look at subdivision or site plan, it would say something different. So that's a big change, we're getting rid of it, and if you look at the drafts, again, that's a lot of the red you see, it's just taking those things out, putting it in one place. Definitions, there are a lot of changes to definitions. No, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's definitely a fair number of changes to definitions. Some of those are because of state law. Some of those are, one of the things that we did is look at every definition that we had. This is true in zoning and it's true in the administrative regulations. And do a search. Are these terms that we're using? If we're not using them, let's get rid of them. And then also, are there terms that we're using that we're not defining? So that's kind of another big area. Again, it's very, very process oriented, but that's a fairly big change. And then some other key areas, when I talk about changes in legislation, some of the big ones are, over the past couple of years, there've been a fair number of changes to the process. So how many days the planning board has to approve a plan in 65. That wasn't actually shown everywhere. There are changes in what happens if your plan is not reviewed, within 65 days. How does that work? So we need to make sure that those changes were met. The definition of a butter. I mentioned we're changing definitions. The state changed the definition of a butter. We need to change our definition of a butter. I think we had a butter defined 3 different ways across all of the regulations.
What is the change?
Yeah, what's the state now, according to the state?
According to the state, it's still every property that is across the street or stream or touches the property is in a butter. And you also now have to notify, as an abutter, if you abut a mobile home park, you have to abut every tenant in the mobile home park. That didn't used to be true. It was just the management office. And then there is now a way of calculating whether somebody's across a street or stream. So it actually tells you how to draw a radius from a certain corner point. So that's just a change you've got to be consistent with.
So it's a little more restrictive, more closer now than it was, correct? Because I remember getting a notice of someone next street over from.
That's right. That's no longer true. So again, you have to abut the property, be across the street or stream, and then again, the statute tells you how to define whether you are or not. So that's a substantive change. It's designed to comply with state law. So a lot of that stuff, I would say, is not a whole lot of fun, but it needs to happen, right? We have to make sure we're consistent. We have to make sure we're up to date. On the subdivision side, and I'll let you guys talk about more of the engineering stuff. So on the site plan regulation side, there are a couple of things. There is one thing that I would say is substantive. We have included landscaping regulations. The town never had landscaping regulations per se. It did have regulations related to landscaping that were kind of scattered in different places, primarily focused on parking lots. So what we did is kind of look at best practices and come up with some proposed landscaping regulations that would apply to all non-residential developments and multifamily, and also take the references to landscaping regulations from the different places where it existed and put them together in one place. So that is a more substantive change, and that would be in the site plan regulations. And that kind of follows trends that the town has done over the past couple of years. I think 2 years ago, the town adopted lighting regulations for the first time. Now those live in that same place. So on the regulatory side, that is really the biggest changes. On the zoning side, very, very similar. There's just dealing with definitions, looking at inconsistencies. One thing we talked a lot about at the planning board was the state has changed how it defines junkyards. we need to change how we define junkyards. Junkyards have been an issue in town, and so it's really important to make sure that we have a definition that aligns with the state definition for us to be able to enforce. Probably the biggest substantive change on the zoning side is eliminating, the town has a growth management ordinance that is very, very out of date. And we, when I say out of date, it's referencing data that is 20 years old.
Which type of zoning again was this? I'm
It's a
sorry.
growth management ordinance. It hasn't been used in many years. So we're proposing that that is eliminated. So that's a fairly substantive change.
Could you put a little more detail why you're proposing that be eliminated?
Yes.
So everybody doesn't think we're just eliminating it.
Right. So it hasn't been used in many, many years, and the reason it hasn't been used in many, many years is in order to have growth management ordinance, you have to be able to have a finding that the growth in the town exceeds what it can handle, what it can manage. Meaning the town doesn't have sufficient facilities to be able to accommodate that growth. And so I think it was 20 years ago, I think it was 2006, was the last time this ordinance was updated. And so in order to update it, what actually NRPC did back then was kind of look at the growth of the town, look at the growth of the region, and come up with a finding that the growth in Hudson exceeded the growth rate of the region. And at that time, that was true. And there were capacity issues. So you're able to identify, particularly in the schools, that there were capacity issues. And so on the basis of those findings, there was a growth management ordinance that was set up, and it limited the number of building permits that could be issued every year. So it's a pretty elaborate formula. And then what the ordinance required is that the planning board has to review the data every year and make a determination as to whether or not they're going to basically restrict building permits. And of course, what has happened is, I shouldn't say of course, but what has happened is that the rate of growth in Hudson has dropped significantly. It's no longer true that Hudson is growing at a rate faster than surrounding communities or the region, and it hasn't been true in a very long time. And it's also no longer true that we have significant capacity issues. School enrollment's been declining. So those challenges don't exist. So for those reasons, the planning board has not imposed these building permit restrictions for many years. I mean, for as long as I can remember, it hasn't been done. The ordinance is just sitting there. So that's why we propose that it be removed.
Do other area towns have these ordinances, or none of them do?
At this point, I don't know of any town that does or enforces them. Litchfield used to, they no longer do. Hollis did, they no longer do. I don't think anyone is still enforcing them, but I could be wrong.
Can you just give us a little bit more background on what that growth is within the surrounding areas? You say that Hudson is declining. Are there other towns and cities that have been growing more rapidly? What is the percentages, or where can we go to find that information to prove that Hudson's growth is not what it was previously?
So a easy way to do it is to go onto the NRPC website, and we have links to basically all of that information for every town. So I couldn't give you the percentages now. I do want to be clear though, Hudson is not declining. It's just the rate of growth is not as high as it used to be 20 years ago, when it was significantly higher. The rate of growth was significantly higher for the region, for the state, for the county, at that time also. So, in general, we're not growing as quickly as we used to. But Hudson is now not growing at a faster rate than the overall region or surrounding towns. Right now in our region, I would say without question, Merrimack is the one that's growing the fastest. There's been a significant amount of development there. Yes, sir.
The rate of growth, is that measuring strictly residents coming in? Or is that also measuring businesses being developed or, buildings going up that are commercial?
Strictly residential. That's an important point. The growth management ordinance only affects residential building permits. It did not affect commercial building permits. Yes.
Has the factor of regarding the availability of clean water been incorporated? Because we've had 2 wells that have been corrupted with PFAS and had to be shut down. And we're now dependent more on Nashua, bringing water over under the bridge, whatever. I brought this up years ago when they were working on the master plan. I said, a town without clean water, a sufficient source, has to look at the rate of growth. Because you can't have more houses and commercial going up if there's not enough clean water to draw from.
Jay, I'll take that one. So there's no restrictions right now when it comes to the water. So we have been impacted by PFAS on our wells. County's doing Central Bay. County's working with the state and Peninsula, which is our main regional partner, for a massive transmission line it's currently being designed right now, permitted. We got $1 million from Central Bay to do the design and permitting. We're looking to upscale it to regional. So we're going to be additional to the Londonderry, state provides additional funds. We're working on that right now. So at this point, there's no restrictions on the water. With that said, if someone comes in and says, I'd like to put in a pharmaceutical manufacturing company and I need $1 million a day, that's a probably big ask. But all of those developments come through the town. And if we don't have enough water or sewer, they do not get entertained. So usually the first meeting is with the staff, we see what they need, and then it moves forward. If I cannot accommodate the water and the sewer, it doesn't go much further.
I heard a rumor floating around, and it could be unknown. Is Pennachuck going to build or has built a, for lack of a better term, I'm sorry, I don't have the technicality, a PFAS cleaning process? In other words, to get the PFAS out of the water.
They have that in place right now, it's carbon filter.
Great.
That's already in place. So what you might be referring to is expanding on that capability. So basically treating more water,
Quite.
As the capacity increases. So
Right.
the more water you treat at the same time, the bigger your filters have to be, and your
Right.
treatment capability.
And it costs us more, as
It's,
we're buying.
it's not costing us more, we're not paying for it as a town. So
Okay.
that's based on, the consumer, so it's national,
Well, yeah,
everyone else
that's-
they provide water to, so if their water rate goes up
Right.
over, so we have a special contract with them where we just pay the increase that Nashua pays, which is basically their base customer. There is projects in place at Pennachuck right now that's addressing expanding the capability. And they're paying through that either through loans or, through state grants and all that, but, they currently right now have the capability of treating and having the PFAS. If you have more PFAS than you require, you can't push water out. That's, so everyone meets the current standards right now. The question becomes, is everyone building the capabilities to meet the standards moving forward? So as you know, in 2030, it's going from 12 and 16 parts per trillion to 4 across the board. There's gonna be additional chemicals added to that list. Right now there's 4, they're talking about 16 or more. It's a never-ending game, but what we do know is that the 4 parts per trillion, which was established under the Biden administration, did not change when the Trump administration came in. They're not touching that, they're just saying, fine, just put it further out. So, as of now, everyone consumes water that meets standards.
That would be wonderful if that got out officially on the new website.
Well, the Board of Selectmen has been discussing this,
Right.
With staff, and, we've had public meetings about it. There was a contract issued to Weston Sampson for just $100 million for that. Everyone knows we've been working with St. Cobain for the past 5 years
Oh, quite.
negotiating it, so.
Yeah, because of the two
Um,
roads.
There is a customer, confidence report under the water that says these are our numbers, we meet the standards, so anyone that wants to see what our current situation is, they're more than welcome to go on the town website and the water department and see the customer, confidence reports.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that the town mails out, or the water
Yes.
department mails out that complete report.
We have to.
I've actually forwarded that to other friends in other states, and they're like, I wish we got this.
Yeah, we do. We're gonna, moving forward, we're actually gonna make it easier for folks, because a lot of folks get this in the mail, they don't know what it is, and then throw it out, so we're gonna get a card with a bar. You can see it online, you can just look it on your phone, so you're not reading it, whatever, at your own time, whatever
Right.
you want, and it's not getting lost in the mail, or somebody's
Right.
not throwing it away, so trying to make it friendlier, staying with the technology and, the tools we have, but yeah, that's a requirement we have to do as a water provider. for
Great.
folks.
Great. Thank you.
One follow-up clarification, on Hudson's current growth rate that we've seen, there's no concern of Hudson running out of water.
Not at this time.
Right,
Not at this
right.
time. As I said, if
Exactly.
someone
And
comes
it's
in.
clean water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also another layer, just so everyone is aware, so there's always the pieces of talking to future potential people coming in. At the end of the day, the board of selectmen is the water and sewer commissioner. So at the end of the day, there's someone that's significant, he still goes to the board of selectmen, and then the board of selectmen makes those decisions through a public meeting, where everyone is more than welcome to come and provide input. So these decisions are not making them. They're out there, you see something significant, but typically 99.9% of the decisions usually get flagged before they go to the board, and typically don't even go to the board of decision if we can entertain it. Now, if someone from the outside pushes this, says, I wanna hear the board do it, and what happens in that case is that you say that the planning board is, they go there for a decision or a recommendation by staff saying, don't do it because we can't accommodate it. With the water and sewer, it's easy. If you don't have it, you can't give something you can't have, right?
Right.
So if they're going and ask the board, it doesn't matter. You don't have it, so yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Numbers don't lie, right?
Right.
So we have some capacity right now, we have some capabilities. We're looking for additional ones to make sure Hudson is taken care of, anything within the needs of Hudson, within 30 to 50 years. Everything is being projected 50 years out. I like to be more realistic and bring that back to 30, because 50 years is a bit, we don't know, but 30 years to me, it's more realistic. But yeah, we're very fortunate, because it's, to your point, I think you're trying to say it's a limited resource, and it's a never ending, at some point you're gonna say, I don't have.
Yeah.
And that's something we keep an eye on, both on water and sewer, so.
Yeah.
I totally get where you're coming from. At this point, we're very fortunate. I mean, we're one of the few communities that where the board of selectmen has said, we can put restriction in for irrigation, but we haven't done that yet this year either.
Right.
As
It
you remember,
comes
I
in
went.
the water bill every month.
Correct, so, but if you recall, about a month or two ago, I went in front of the board and says, give me the authority if something happens, because things do happen, things break. And we wanna be able to go to tier 2, tier 3, which is basically, limited odd even days, or complete irrigation, or outdoor activity. Again, this is like the 5th year, I think, that we haven't had the need to do that. As actually, it's never been done since I've been here in my 12 years, so, but that's something the board executes every year, in case something does happen.
And this is great, but I think we probably should go back.
I'm sorry, we've gone down rabbit holes.
Oh, it's a good question.
Quick question.
Yes.
When we were talking before about notifications, when some project is proposed or some changes, do you notify within a certain radius? I come from Massachusetts, 500 feet, and when I put an addition on my house, 11 neighbors I got notified, which kind of surprised me it was that many, but, I know you said, across the street, but obviously a change in zoning or a big project impacts people 500 feet away, even though they're not touching, they're not abutting neighbors per se.
Right, so the town has historically notified a wider range of people, 200 feet. You are not, to be legally an abutter, you have to be abutting abutting the property or across the street or something. So there's a difference between who gets a notice and who's illegally an abutter, because a person who's a legal abutter has standing. And so that's why that's really specifically defined. When it comes to a zoning change, as a general rule, zoning changes, there is no notification sent out unless it affects, you know, a handful of property owners, in which case there is a notification requirement for a zoning district boundary change. In general zoning changes, there's no notification mailed directly to people. They're all public processes. So all of the meetings that the planning board holds, reviewing a subdivision or site plan, those are public. They have to be publicly noticed. So that is, you know, true, and everybody is welcome to come. So there's notification in that sense, because you're right, people are affected by development who are not necessarily abutters. They have the right to come to a planning board meeting, hear the presentation, and comment. So, but you just won't get, you know, an individual notice in the mail.
Thank you.
And you know, kind of, because what we're doing is so broad, that's really why we're having these meetings, right? Because in addition to having meetings at the planning board level, it really is important to get community input. And you've got something quite this broad. So, I don't know, Steve, are there any changes you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, on the regulatory side, one of the things we're addressing is some gray areas that are in the regulations. Like you read the site plan regulations, and down near the bottom it says a traffic study may be required by the planning board, or a noise study may be required by the planning board. So we're trying to come up with triggers for those things, so it's black and white, why you need, when you need to submit a traffic study, when you need to submit a noise study, for example. In traffic studies, what we're proposed in our draft regulation is that everybody provides a trip generation memo. And that is, you know, for a site plan, it's okay, this business expects to generate this many cars, you know, during the peak hour. And if that number is over 100 cars, then a minor traffic study or a major traffic study is required. And a major traffic study is, you know, a 200-page traffic impact analysis. Or if it's 1,000 vehicle trips a day additional added to the roadway network, you know, then that a major traffic study is required. But right now, there's nothing. Right now, it just says maybe required. So we're trying to make it for the applicant so that they know what they need to provide, and for the planning board, so that they know what is gonna be coming their way.
Yeah.
Noise study wise, again, there's nothing in the regulations for noise study other than just it may be required. So what we've come up with Elvis's help actually, is a checklist. And it's, you know, if your proposed project has, you know, rooftop air conditioners, then check the box. If it's gonna have, you know, if it's a car wash operation, you check the box. And then, you know, if you check the box, then it means a noise study is required. You know, so that makes it black and white for the applicant, for the planning board, and just gets rid of the gray areas. Yeah, on the other regulatory stuff, the site plan regulations, subdivision regulations are pretty good. There isn't a lot that needs to be changed substantively. Like stormwater regulations, they reference an old New Hampshire stormwater manual, so we've updated that. And there's a few inconsistencies between Hudson's regulations and the alteration of terrain process that DES requires for any project that's over 100,000 square feet. So we've updated the regulations so that those things line up and match, because, you know, it's something that we see all the time when we're reviewing projects for the town, is, you know, they'll say, well, we submitted all our stormwater design based on New Hampshire's AOT process, and then we say, well, no, Hudson's regulation requires this, so you gotta do this. And it just, we're trying to eliminate those types of, not gray areas, but those types of inconsistencies between, you know, state regulations and Hudson's regulations. You know, obviously, if there's something that we feel strongly about that Hudson has that DES doesn't have, or there's an inconsistency there that Hudson's is stronger, we're gonna keep that in place. You know, we're gonna do what we can, you know, Hudson regulations the best that we can, obviously. But, yeah, other than that, it's not a huge update. It's addressing out-of-date references and just cleaning stuff up.
No, I was just thinking maybe you could explain to me the difference of how implementation of zoning changes are gonna happen, land use because they're not all gonna end up on the warrant.
That's a really good
Right.
point. That's a really good point. So the subdivision, site plan, regulations, the administrative regulations, those are all regulations of the planning board. Driveway regulations as well, stormwater management, the engineering details, those are all planning board regulations. And so those can be adopted by the planning board after a public hearing. And they do not go to town meeting. Zoning changes do have to go to town meeting, so that's how we anticipate that this is going to work. There'll be, presumably, I shouldn't presume, I'm gonna presume, that we'll have one warrant article for an update of the zoning ordinance as proposed, and these are kind of all of the changes that we were talking about. And then we will have, at least one, again, probably freestanding warrant article that would address the housing proposal. I can't say that there might not be more, but I'm thinking that's probably all that we're gonna do this year, aside from petitions. So that is an important point. Substantively, it's different. With the planning board, the way this process is gonna go is ultimately we're gonna, have our final drafts go through this public input process. It's gonna go to the planning board. The planning board will discuss these changes. They may want more changes, but ultimately there will be drafts that the planning board will vote to send to a public hearing of the board. And then after that public hearing, the board could choose to adopt the regulations by a vote of the planning board, or they could, again, take more input, make more changes, go back to public hearing, but that'll be the process. And I'm guessing that'll be, that process will be happening this fall.
Then first,
Go ahead.
The planning board regulations, are they, just redid the town website, so this is a Tim question. Are they readily available on your webpage currently?
All the regulations are available through the town website on E-code.
On E-code?
Got the check that, just on there.
Everything on the old, on the new. So everything was brought over, but that is, like Tim mentioned, on eCode.
E-code's kind of nice because you can do word search. Under our new, hopefully we're gonna have an index.
We can have an index.
We're gonna have an index with.
Tim says we're having an index, that's what he wants.
We really need an index.
We need an index.
Making it easier for everyone to find the different regulations. So once that's incorporated in the E-code, I believe that'll actually make those searches a little more defined.
E-code is all of the town codes, so honestly,
All of the time?
it's everything, so not just land use, so honestly, the easiest thing to do is just Google subdivision regulations, or whatever, it'll get you right to it, you won't have to go through everything.
I mean, there's a piece in 334 that referenced the XVIII, and I couldn't find where the hell that was. And I went to E-code and I did a search for that specifically and it nailed it.
Yeah.
But
It works. The only caveat with E-code is if it was a change at the last town meeting, or it was a change like maybe in the past year, you have to look on top and click on the change.
is that spelling simply ECO?
yeah, it's the word,
Okay,
But yeah, E-code.
electronic code.
Code.
oh,
And almost, you know,
E-code.
Right,
Okay.
right.
and I think every town in Massachusetts, and I think probably across the country, is in that E-code.
Ah,
You can find regulations and zoning regulations and all across the country that way.
great. I just want to say, awesome. Thank you, Mr. Foster O'Neill. I've read your reports when I've been talking about at other meetings. You guys are amazing with the NRPC. When you stepped in and was the interim, was it the planning board? I forgot your exact title. Yeah, but whatever, it's companies and organizations such as that can, drag us into the 21st century. Which is greatly needed. Thank you.
Is this the time and place to talk about that cottage court
Yeah, I
a
was
little
gonna-
bit,
sure.
a little bit more?
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Give us a little bit more
Yeah.
So
than just cottage court.
it's a work in progress. There's a few communities. The idea is can we come up with a way to allow people to build smaller houses, that are more affordable, especially for, young families, young professionals, but also people who are downsizing. So how can we do that under our existing regulations in a way that kind of makes sense? So the concept of what's called cottage court is something that a few communities have adopted. Hampton's adopted, and Keene, I can't remember who else. There's a few other towns that have Antrim. And what they do is basically allow you to build, typically the way they work is you can build at a higher density, or a smaller lot, but there's restriction on the size of the home. So most commonly, you can't, the maximum size of the home is 1,200 square feet. That's typically what we're seeing. And that's gross area, not including garages, et cetera. So that's kind of the idea, is you allow a smaller lot or a higher density. They are typically detached single-family homes. Some ordinances allow duplexes or townhouses. I think what we're drafting is just single-family homes. And, this draft has a maximum of 1,200 square feet. And how the density or lot size depends on the underlying zoning district. So it'll range anywhere from 5,000 square feet in TR to half an acre. So it's, if you don't have sewer. So that's kind of the thinking. And there would have to be restrictions in place on expansion of the homes, because you really do want to keep it at that size. So that's the general concept. Setbacks are also a little bit less, of course, because you've got smaller lots. So that's the general idea.
Is this district part of the completed streets narrative?
No, not necessarily, but there is a relationship in the idea that, these are more compact, walkable neighborhoods, so yes.
But is that the goal ultimately, the
Is.
completed streets? And
I would say that that's a part of it, but the real goal is to get some smaller, more affordable homes. So that's kind of the big goal, is can we find a way to do that? Because I think as we appreciate, most of the homes we're seeing built now, the single-family homes, are large and expensive.
wouldn't you have the complaint though that will increase public schools, water, sewer, and in that area?
You might. That's possible with any development, so that is true. That's something we've got to weigh. Yes.
I was just wondering where you're going to find room for something like this.
I mean, it is true. Hudson is, building, I don't want to say it's built out, but Hudson is seeing a lot of development. There isn't a lot of land that's left. But we do still have, land that is available for development. And there's a few areas of town, if you kind of look at the land use map there, where you can see it's still possible. Because these are smaller, though, there are areas where, you could see these kind of wedge into existing smaller lots that are scattered throughout the town. But you still do have a fair amount of developable land. I will say again, this is just a draft. As it's drafted now, the one zone where you wouldn't allow them is in the rural residential. Because that area is supposed to be more rural, lower density. I shouldn't say the one residential district that wouldn't allow them would be rural.
But, all right, that thought just went flying through my brain kept on going.
I'll take the question behind you
Yeah,
and then we'll
go
come
ahead.
back to
I spend quite a bit of time in Manchester, and they just redid all theirs, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah.
And they have some very nice regulations in regards to smaller lots. You know, they are down to 6,000 square feet, but their setbacks have a measurement, and one side can be as small as this, but the other side is much larger, so that, you know, you can position the house where it makes sense. You know, so looking at those regulations might help us.
That's a good thought. I will take a look. I did look at Manchester.
I remembered what I was gonna express concern about. Ultimately, developers want to make as much money as possible.
Yes.
What is going to make developing a cottage court financially attractive to the developers?
Someone behind you.
I don't want to be argumentative here, but the statement to say that developers want to make as much money as they possibly can is not a true statement. Everybody in society wants to make as much money as they can. Even if you're an employee, you go to your boss and you want to make more money. The idea behind having a cottage court type situation, as far as I can see, would be to allow those individuals that are, let's say, making $60,000 a year, be able to afford a 3-bedroom home and start a family. So attractiveness is the goal of any developer, because they want to be able to sell the product.
Okay, yeah.
I was gonna ask the same thing though, if you know of any incentives for developers I mean, you're creating the framework here.
Right.
Right.
Are there incentives that you're aware of? Because this is a great idea. I remember Haverhill Road going from 111 to Hannaford. One property, they must have died off. It was a very old home. And one property was taken down, and there were 5 homes put in. And I originally thought, oh my gosh, they're cramming in an awful lot. Now I think 5 families have been able to come into Hudson and make a home.
So I'm gonna jump in real quick, and I'm gonna let them piggyback.
So this came for discussion in the past numerous times. Hudson is not affordable anymore. We've seen a lot of properties out there selling for, especially new homes. When I started working here in 2014, I think homes were going for somewhere between $3 to $375 brand new. Now we're seeing homes going over $1 million, and they're not even blinking. Most of them are from the outside. We have young people that work at the town hall that are trying to move to Hudson, and they can't afford it, right? And so the question has become, how can we make this affordable for getting the young people to move to Hudson? And so the idea became is starter homes, right? You know, when you're just you and your spouse and you don't have any kids, then you maybe need 1 or 2 bedrooms, and that's what that 1,200 square feet limitation gives you. It's a starter home. Now it could be for someone that loves Hudson and they want to downgrade, but they don't want to go anywhere else. They want to get in a community they don't like. They like to stay here. But this might give you that ability. You're downgrading to something smaller. You're still staying here. Go from there. But what I got from the feedback we were getting that basically got this to be at the position it's right now is starter homes. We don't have that anymore. You go either you get something from your parents and you inherit, or you're gonna have to hit the lottery. There's nothing in between, and I'm seeing that a lot, especially with young folks that are trying to move in, or we're trying to get people to work in town. They can't afford to stay here. They're commuting an hour, and unfortunately that gets old. And within 6 months to a year, they're like, not for me. And they move on somewhere. I don't know where they're going, but that's what we're trying to bring in. And you hear that across New Hampshire, right? Trying to keep folks, young people to move to, who's gonna take care of us, right? And that's how I see it, and that's why, from what I see, this is why this is coming up. Now, folks might say, no, this is not for us, have at it, but at least we can say we tried. Here's one alternative, might not be perfect, but here's one way to maybe address it. And then we'll go from there.
And I think the core concept of trying to make homes more affordable in our community is you take a 5-home development, you have infrastructure that has to go, water, sewer, roads. That cost now is expanded by 5. So I'm not gonna, don't anybody quote me, say we're able to put 10 in there, that same infrastructure now is divided by 10 homes. So the cost reduction to that contractor and that eventual homeowner should be reduced because now we're splitting it up on a wider base. And that's kind of the concept. It goes back right to the old unfinished case. 1,200 square feet, it says it's a starter home, that's my home. And I'm not going anywhere.
Still there?
So, that was kind of the concept, that's kind of the concept behind it, is it's taking all those expenses and dividing them up amongst a larger group than just focusing on 4 or 5.
I would ask that some of those quote-unquote starter homes be referred to as retirement homes and be ranches. Sorry.
Single floor living.
I'm not gonna be going up and down those flights of stairs anymore.
That's why my starter home is a 1,200 square foot ranch, and that's gonna be my retirement home.
I like your comment though on incentives, and that's
Yeah.
something I'll think about. Definitely. Sorry.
And I was gonna say, so my parents, I built my parents' property and the same thing, I built them a ranch because that's what they need and I think that's what I'll need when I retire. So that's a very good point. And I don't think there'll be a restriction to what kind of house you can build in these lots. If you want a ranch, you have at it, it's just, it allows
The
more
ranch
footage.
costs, I mean, per square foot, you've got more foundation, you've
Correct.
got more roof
Yes,
space,
more
you've got
insulation, more
everything.
insulation, yes.
You know, it's more expensive, and I went to visit that development on the other side of Barrett's Hill with a super insulated one.
Oh, yes,
and
the
everything else there.
echo, what was it
All-
called? The
Net
energy-
zero?
Net zero,
Net
yeah,
zero.
how'd that work out?
They're all duplexes. I turned to him and I said, what about a couple of one? And he goes, no, it would cost about $1 million. I said, so? Because houses already cost $1 million. That's it. You know, but
If it costs them $1 million, I'll have to sell it probably for a little more, so that's the problem.
Yeah.
And with the financing right now and the interest rates, as
Yeah.
you can tell, it's impossible, but yeah. I don't think it will be a restriction on the
No.
style of the property, so.
And also accessible units are encouraged.
yes, I mean,
That's-
ADA accessible
Yes.
especially.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, is there any rebates or funding or whatever to developers to design
Not that I'm aware
ADA
of.
accessible homes?
There won't be any break from the town, I can tell you that. So, good luck with that, but on the state,
In
if
the
they wish
state
to do
or
so,
the federal?
if they wanna do, yes, the federal, I mean, I
Yeah.
know some of these folks that they're doing the net zero, they're getting a break.
Yeah,
But that's not at the town, that's not a town program, right?
No,
So,
no.
I don't, and again, I can't speak for the town, but I don't envision planning board giving a break for anybody else, so that's
no, I just
probably
meant
not
at
gonna-
a higher level.
Right.
Yeah, it would need to be at the state level.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching a planning board meeting, and it might not have been a planning board meeting, it might have been a city meeting in Nashua. And Sam is trying to, it's decoding or coding, changing. Recode, thank you very much, yes. So you've gotta pay attention to a whole bunch of different, not just Hudson, not just statewide, federal, every place to find out what's really going on. Cause I was surprised that they can recode in Nashua as easily as they have been.
I wouldn't say, but
Yeah, some of the things were pretty easy.
It's been, yeah, so Nashua is going through the process of updating all of their regulations and their zoning ordinance also. It's very comprehensive. It's been going on for at least a year now, more than a year. The goal is by the end of this year. It is complete transformation, including very substantive changes. So it's way more than what we're talking about here. But it is a good point. There's a lot of change that is going to come to Nashua when these things pass.
It was very easy for him to recode the Northeastern Boulevard to put in was it in a restaurant or house next to restaurants or something, just by simply recoding. He didn't, I don't think they had to go for a vote for the voters or anything.
In Nashua, you don't. Nashua's a city,
Right.
so you go to the Board of Aldermen.
Yeah,
That's right.
but it was the mayor's project that off, Northeastern Boulevard, if you know what I'm referring to.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wanna say that they were able to get it through because they said there was a McDonald's there and other, quote, businesses. It's been a while since
That was a zoning board. Actually, that was a zoning board.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
well, what they tried to do was to get the recoding to go before the alderman versus sending it and kicking it back to planning and zoning because they knew that it would be a more complicated issue. Although they used the excuse that, well, you're gonna have public input on zoning and planning anyway. Well, true, but people don't do the third step down the road.
Yeah, and in Nashua, you can do that. You
Right.
can go to the Board of
Yeah.
Aldermen and get the zoning ordinance changed. And people do.
And they
With
do.
specific projects, they
Yeah.
do. That is not true here.
That's true.
Right.
It's not.
But I just like to ask a question in the group. Other than the zoning map, are there specific zoning ordinances that are being in place in town or site plan regulations that you feel need to be, that are out of line? I mean, you're here, you came in for probably to get information, but also they're looking for that input on, is there a specific regulation that you think is not good for the town, needs to be tweaked or altered, or a site plan regulation or something like that? So I don't know if anybody has anything.
You and I spent, what, 45 minutes together about a year ago, right? Chatting about some of the stuff. And I've been going through it, and I already said that I'm going to send it by email. Because as I told Jay before this started, I could take the entire hour with the list. It's like, that wouldn't be fair either.
Jay, do you wanna talk a little bit about the sidewalk, what we're trying to do about the sidewalks? So there's been, was a generic idea about sidewalks, trying to now narrow it down to where it makes sense and how, do you wanna talk a little bit about that at all?
Sure.
What we're talking about and how we're gonna implement that, I think that's a.
Yeah, right now, the regulation says, the sidewalk as required by the planning board, essentially. So you could have a business, propose out on, I don't know, halfway out of town, and they may be required to put a sidewalk in, but then there's no sidewalks on either side. So we're trying to clean that up and put in the regulations specifically where sidewalks are gonna be required. And that's gonna be Central Street, Lowell Road, 102.
Main corridors.
Yeah, the main corridors through town, if you're proposing a project, expect it to be required to put in a sidewalk there. Or update the sidewalk, maintain the sidewalk, whatever you gotta do if there's an existing sidewalk. But-
And also the buffer related to those corridors, how far back we're gonna go, so even though you might not be on the corridor, if you're close to it or adjacent to it, where it makes sense that you're gonna be connected to it.
Quarter mile, I think is what we talked
I
about.
think quarter mile, yeah. Just where it makes sense, and that's what we're trying to do, is have the regulation that makes sense.
And complete those networks, because the town
Yes.
has also put a significant investment in kind of parts of those. There's state money that's come in, so that's really the idea, is let's have complete sidewalk networks along those major corridors.
One thing that puzzles me, you've got a sidewalk on the side of the road of Alburn, halfway across the front of Alburn, and then there's no sidewalk for the rest of the way to the pavement.
It's there, you just can't see it.
To me, that just.
So that's part of our assessment of this, and also, I don't know if you followed this, but one of the things that we're trying to do and the board has been pushing for is, we had a warrant article last year to do a sidewalk completing the sidewalk segment on 102 from what I like to call the library common, which is, basically the big triangle. You know which one I'm referring to? So 102, 111, and 38 comes all together, all the way down to Auburn on both sides. So that's coming, it's a $2.5 million project. We're waiting for the state to tell us you could go on the design, which is gonna be about $500,000. And that's gonna be taken care of for this project. But part of this is let's focus on what makes sense, close the gaps, like Jay said, and let's not worry about, you know, sidewalks in the middle of nowhere that we can't even maintain them, we don't even plow them if you're not along the main corridor. So we having these things implemented, and then we turn around and tell the future taxpayer, when they call in and say, hey, the sidewalk is being plowed, they're like, welcome to Hudson, get a shovel and get going. We don't have it. Our ordinance says clearly, unless it's along 111, 102, or 38, DPW doesn't go out and do it. And Manchester has the same kind of rules, you know, you're responsible for your own sidewalk, but I don't think that's right. So, you know, it's nice to have a sidewalk, I totally get it, but where it makes sense, where it's being utilized and it's not a burden now for the folks that are actually gonna be moving there and expected to plow it if they're gonna use it. I don't think that's right. And the other thing too that's really critical is, we don't have any funds to replace the sidewalks. We put in all this infrastructure in, so when they collapse or where they have issues, potholes, we don't have the money to replace them. So why are we putting them in to begin with? You know, as well as everybody else in town, if you walk along low road sidewalks, you know that some of them, they're very questionable and should be redone. So if we don't fix them those, what are we doing out there doing, you know, other sidewalks? So that's the theme. Focus on what makes sense.
I would like to caution everybody though, when they talk about sidewalks, it's not just the business that pays for a sidewalk. And you have to take into account, everybody's screaming in this state about affordable housing. You can't expect a builder to put in a sidewalk and all these extra whatever without, and I mean without taking into account what that will cost the person buying that house. So if you really want affordable housing, you wanna talk about bringing in the town hall employees that are making $60,000. You cannot tack that price onto a home. And that's exactly what happens. And it's not because the builder wants to get rich, like Mr. Boyer said. Everybody, you go to your employer to get a raise. It's the same with a developer. So I think that's just totally gotten lost in this state or around the country, what it actually would cost the taxpayer. If your main concern is affordable housing, back off a little bit. Because it also, not only does it add to the bill, the cost of buying that house, it goes on to the town saying, well, it's gonna cost us X, Y, and Z to have it plowed. All that has to be taken into account, and I believe that's lost nowadays.
I have a comment about sidewalks and plowing. Where I lived before I moved here, there are zoning requirements required sidewalks on both sides of the street in every area of town. And the town plowed one side of the sidewalks in snowstorms. It's also on the main line from Florida up through Boston, Amtrak. All right? And so, especially in the center of town would plow the sidewalks on one side. The sun comes out the next day, melts some snow, becomes an ice skating rink, and everybody walking to the train station is walking in the road, which is Route 27 in Massachusetts. All right? So, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Plowing sidewalks really doesn't work well, because you got snow on this side, you got snow on this side, melts, where does it go? I mean, I love the sidewalks, especially this time of year.
Yes.
But in the winter, never walk on the sidewalk. And nobody does.
And don't walk in the road.
Stay home. Stay home.
That's the only place left. So be careful what you ask for.
Yes. Again, we're kind of, the whole point of this is getting up to where we need to be as far as the state codes and other requirements. Make sure we don't have any inconsistencies across the board, because that's been an issue. Make sure there's no gray area, like Steve said. Everything should be black and white. Either you can do it or you cannot do it. Make sure you set up thresholds, so now when this planning board, or the next one, or the staff for that matter, there's no room for interpretation. These are what the rules say, they're very clear, this is what you need to do and cannot do. So we're not getting into personalities now, or inconsistencies on the decision making. It should be, as Steve said, black and white. You either can do it or cannot do it. If you cannot do it, these are the things you need to do. That's what we had.
and making sure it's not right just now, but in the future as well, when we all gone. And hopefully we do this every 10 years, but we'll see, but this is the first step, because we should do this every so often to make sure everything is up to date, because it hasn't been done before. And the nice thing about this process is to be paid by the planning board, courtesy of the planning board. So this is not costing you folks anything. This is being paid by funds that were basically collected for the target approval, and it's part of the master plan, so it's not costing folks anything. And they were picked as the, the lowest, most cost-effective bid. We went through the bid process and everything. So as much as we like Jay and Steve, we didn't pick them because we like them. They were the most qualified and the most cost-effective one. So that's how it was. That was the process. I think.
So please enjoy some refreshments
Yeah.
from the fine folks.
And just one other point I'd make, and I can't say we've done this everywhere, but one of the things we are also trying to do is make it more, readable and understandable, just for the general public. So we are trying to remove kind of archaic language as we go along, things like, therefore and said and stuff like that.
Shakespeare was
Right, I mean, because there's a lot of that, and of course, some of these regulations are many decades old, so it's inevitable, right? So the more we can kind of put things into plainer language and make it clearer, the better.
I think it also will make it extensively clearer for the planning board to function. Because you're tripping over things, and the same problems are getting presented to you frequently, and yet it could all be solved with the right verbiage and text.
I believe that's the intent of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually something we've been looking at, because, they see project after project
Right.
asking for the same waiver every time.
Yeah.
So is there something wrong with the regulation?
Right.
And we need to clean that up, and that's part of what we're trying to do.
Yes.
Right. Exactly, thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. But it's desperately needed. I know you're having to wade through a quagmire of verbiage that's like, as you say, antiquated and.
Right.
and
Fortunately, I like this stuff.
like putting the pieces together of a puzzle where the pieces do not fit each other. Yes.
It might not be perfect, but I think it's gonna be really close.
It's gonna be better. It's definitely gonna be significantly better. Yeah, significantly better. And to say that is not a criticism for what's there, it's just inevitably, right? All communities, you have regulations, there are several of them, they're complicated, and over time, things inevitably get out of date, and it's very difficult to kind of maintain everything, at the same time. Every year, I mean, the board is always focusing on some changes. At some point, it makes sense to look at everything comprehensively.
What I'd like to make clear before this gets into the newspaper incorrectly, as much as I appreciate the work that you people are doing this because our town brought this before you and wanted this clarification. So I thank the town of Hudson, and I thank the planning board, and I thank the zoning board for being on board with getting you people to clarify these terms for us. So thank you.
So unless anybody else has more questions, we'll be here for a little while longer. There's a bunch of ways to get a hold of us if you have a long list of emailed comments you'd like to share with us. You can email Brooke and Elvis, you can email us, there's the website with the link on there. So any way you guys need to get a hold of us, there's ways to make it happen. We're looking forward to anything you guys have to say, any suggestions.
Thank you.
Feel free.